For 7 years, I was the family disappointment. 7 years since I dropped out of law school to pursue design. 7 years since my father, William Whitmore, stopped speaking to me for 3 months. 7 years since my mother, Margaret Whitmore, began telling her friends I was taking time to find myself, instead of admitting I'd chosen art over a legal career. My older brother, Daniel Whitmore, was a celebrated neurosurgeon. My sister, Victoria Whitmore, managed a powerful hedge fund. And then there was me, Elena Whitmore, 32 years old, supposedly living in a cramped Brooklyn studio, working on little art projects. That's what they thought. What they didn't know was that my design firm, Northbridge Collective, had grown into a global branding powerhouse with 240 employees across New York, Los Angeles, and London. We handled rebrands for Fortune 500 companies. We built visual systems for billion-dollar tech platforms. Last quarter alone, we generated $340 million in revenue. But I stopped explaining years ago. They saw paint-stained jeans and assumed poverty. They heard design and imagined me making $50 logos online. So I let them believe it. The night of my mother's charity gala at the Plaza Hotel was no different. Manhattan's elite gathered beneath chandeliers, writing checks and comparing achievements. Daniel arrived in Tom Ford, fresh from a surgery on a senator's wife. Victoria shimmered in Valentino and diamonds. I wore a simple black dress I designed myself. Margaret air-kissed me. This is my youngest. She's creative. Creative. Like a diagnosis. A pharmaceutical CEO asked politely, "What do you do?" "I run a design firm." "How nice," his wife said gently. "My niece makes greeting cards too." I smiled. Dinner was a 10-course affair arranged by status. My family sat near the front. I had the least prestigious seat, wedged between Daniel's wife, Caroline, and a venture capitalist who spoke around me as if I were invisible. As Daniel described a 14-hour brain surgery, and Victoria bragged about a $4.7 billion acquisition, my father raised his glass proudly. Then Margaret turned to me. "Elena is keeping busy with her art projects." And just like that, I was reduced to the family hobby. They had no idea what was coming. "I'm not mistaken," Arthur Caldwell said firmly. "You handled the Nexus Systems rebrand and the Altitude financial campaign that won every major design award last year." The pharmaceutical CEO leaned forward. "Northbridge did our rebrand 3 years ago. Cost us $8 million. Best investment we ever made." My mother's smile tightened. $8 million. I took a sip of water. Our rates were lower back then. Arthur stared at me. "You're Elena Whitmore, the founder?" "Yes." Daniel's confident expression flickered. Victoria stopped mid-bite. My father's hand trembled slightly as he set down his glass. "That's impossible," he said. "You live in a studio apartment." "I own a 4,000 square foot loft in Dumbo," I replied evenly. "The studio is my workshop." Silence. Heavy. Thick. Unavoidable. Arthur pulled out his phone. Within seconds his eyes widened. "Forbes estimates Northbridge Collective at $1.2 billion. Victoria whispered, "Billion." "On paper," I said calmly. "Most of it is equity." Margaret's hand went to her throat. "Elena, what are you saying?" "I'm saying the company you've been dismissing for 7 years employs 240 people. We have 3 international offices. Last year, revenue was $890 million. Daniel let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "That's absurd." Just then, phones began buzzing around the table. Then from neighboring tables. A ripple of vibration spreading through the ballroom. The pharmaceutical CEO looked down at his screen and went pale. The Wall Street Journal just published a feature. Arthur read aloud quietly, "The billion-dollar designer, how Elena Whitmore built an empire while her family thought she was broke." My mother's face drained of color. "You talked to the press," she whispered. "They interviewed me 3 weeks ago," I said. "They wanted a story about unconventional founders." My father grabbed his phone with shaking hands. His eyes scanned rapidly. "They quoted us," he breathed. "They included what we said." Victoria leaned over his shoulder. "They are calling you one of the most influential designers of your generation." Daniel stared at me as if seeing a stranger. The struggling artist narrative was collapsing in real time. Across the ballroom, heads were turning. Whispers were spreading. And for the first time in 7 years, my family was finally looking at me, not with pity, not with embarrassment, but with shock. The whispers spread faster than the waitstaff could move between tables. Across the ballroom, guests were pulling out their phones, reading the same headline, glancing in my direction with widened eyes. Margaret looked frozen. They said you were struggling," she whispered. "We told them you were still figuring things out." "I know," I said quietly. "It's quoted in paragraph 3. My father's face crumpled slightly as he kept reading. "It says here that your company's current valuation is closer to $1.8 billion, not $1.2. That's correct," I replied. The Forbes estimate was based on last year's numbers. Victoria shook her head slowly. "You're a billionaire." "On paper," I repeated. "Liquid assets are significantly less." "Significantly less," Daniel muttered. "It says your personal net worth is estimated at $380 million. Around us, conversations were shifting. People from neighboring tables were now openly staring. Some even stood to get a better look. The pharmaceutical CEO extended his hand toward me. "Miss Whitmore, I apologize for underestimating you earlier. Your firm transformed our brand identity. It's an honor." "Thank you," I said politely, shaking his hand. Arthur Caldwell leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. "We should discuss investment opportunities." "We are not seeking outside investment," I replied. A slow smile crossed his face. "Smart. Maintain control." Margaret's phone began ringing nonstop. She silenced it without answering. "What do I tell people?" she whispered. "The truth," I said calmly. "That your daughter runs a successful company." Daniel was still scrolling. "It says you donated $15 million to the Brooklyn Museum. You funded an entire design wing at Parsons. You support arts programs in underprivileged schools." "Art education matters," I said simply. Victoria blinked rapidly. $15 million. Daniel couldn't write that kind of check. Daniel looked at me, stunned. "You've been doing all this, while we thought you were barely paying rent." "You never asked," I said. The words weren't angry. Just factual. My father finally looked up from his phone. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I did," I answered softly. "You just didn't listen." That silence hurt more than any accusation could have. Because deep down, they knew it was true. The tension at the table hadn't eased when Caroline, Daniel's wife, spoke carefully. "There's something else in the article." My mother looked up sharply. "What now?" Caroline hesitated. "It mentions that 3 years ago, when your parents were facing foreclosure, Elena purchased the mortgage." Silence. "The kind that presses against your chest." My father frowned. "Foreclosure. The house in Scarsdale," I said gently. "After the market crash, you were underwater. The bank was preparing to seize it." Margaret stared at me. "We renegotiated." They adjusted the terms. No, I said quietly. I bought the note from the bank. Through an LLC. Then I forgave the debt. Daniel's chair scraped slightly against the floor. You paid off our house, my father asked, his voice barely audible. Yes. How much? Victoria whispered. 4.1 million. My mother covered her mouth. That's why the notices stopped, my father murmured. We thought it was a clerical error. We thought we got lucky. You did, I said. You just didn't know why. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Why wouldn't you tell us? What would I have said? I asked calmly. That I paid off your mortgage with profits from the company you didn't believe existed. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, stunned. Victoria's voice broke. That was pocket change to you. I had just closed an $80 million contract that quarter, I replied. Yes. It was manageable. A rounding error, my mother repeated faintly. Her entire understanding of reality was unraveling. My father looked at me differently now. Not shocked. Not confused. Ashamed. We positioned you as the failure, he said hoarsely. At every holiday. Every dinner. I told your uncle you were freelancing. I know. And all that time, you were protecting us. I wasn't protecting you, I corrected softly. I was protecting my peace. The honesty landed heavily. Victoria began crying openly. We don't deserve you. Maybe not, I said. But you're still my family. Across the ballroom, the gala host was being interrupted by murmurs growing louder. Someone near the stage called out, Is Elena Whitmore here? Another voice followed. Speech. Applause started building, spreading like wildfire. Margaret looked at me in panic. They want you on stage. For the first time in 7 years, she wasn't introducing me as the creative one. She was asking. And waiting. The applause grew louder. Elena. Elena. The gala host approached our table, smiling nervously. Miss Whitmore, everyone would love to hear a few words. I hadn't planned for this part. But maybe, deep down, I had. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress, aware that every pair of eyes in the ballroom was now fixed on me. The same people who had dismissed me an hour ago were suddenly waiting for my approval, my insight, my voice. The microphone felt cool in my hand. I didn't expect to speak tonight, I began. The room quieted instantly. 7 years ago, I dropped out of law school to pursue design. Most people told me I was making a mistake. A guaranteed career for uncertainty. Stability for creativity. A few knowing nods appeared in the crowd. For 7 years, many people, including my own family, assumed I had failed. They saw paint-stained jeans and thought poverty. They heard designer and imagined hobbyist. A ripple of uncomfortable shifting moved through the front tables. I don't blame them, I continued evenly. We are conditioned to recognize certain types of success. Titles. Degrees. Traditional paths. I paused. But success doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it grows quietly. Without validation. Without applause. The room was completely still. Here's what I've learned. Other people's assumptions about your life have no impact on your actual life. Their doubts don't shrink your potential. Their misunderstanding doesn't define your value. Applause began, but I gently raised my hand. One more thing, I said. If there's something tonight has proven, it's this: ask questions. Be curious about the people you love. Don't decide their story before you've listened to it. I glanced toward my parents. Because sometimes the person you think is struggling is simply building something you can't yet see. This time, the applause was thunderous. As I stepped away from the microphone, the room rose to its feet. Not for the billionaire. Not for the headline. But for the truth. And when I walked back to my table, my father was standing. Crying. "I'm proud of you," he said. The words were 7 years late. But they finally arrived. When I returned to the table, the energy around us had completely shifted. Executives who had barely acknowledged me earlier were now waiting for eye contact. Venture capitalists were recalculating their tone. People leaned in as if proximity alone might grant them insight. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at my father. "I'm proud of you," he repeated, voice unsteady. I should have said that years ago. I held his gaze. Yes. You should have. The honesty wasn't cruel. It was necessary. My mother reached for my hand. Her grip was tight, almost fragile. "We were worried about you," she said softly. "You were embarrassed by me," I replied. The distinction landed heavily between us. Victoria wiped her eyes. "All those times I offered you entry-level positions at my firm. I thought I was helping." "I know," I said. It came from concern. "But it was condescending," she whispered. Daniel finally spoke. "I thought your work wasn't substantial. I saved lives. I assumed design was decorative." "Design shapes how people experience the world," I answered calmly. "It influences decisions, trust, behavior. It can build or destroy billion-dollar companies." He nodded slowly. "I see that now." My mother's phone rang again. She silenced it. "The press is asking why we never mentioned your success," she said. "Tell them the truth," I replied. "You didn't know." Her eyes filled again. "We should have known." "Yes," I said simply. That word carried years of quiet hurt. My father leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Were you lonely?" The question surprised me. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I had my team. My work. People who believed in what I was building." "But not your family." "No," I said. "Not my family." Victoria swallowed hard. "Do you hate us?" I shook my head. "No. I'm just tired. Tired of defending my choices. Tired of being introduced as the cautionary tale." Silence settled again, softer this time. My father reached across the table. "Can we start over?" I considered the question carefully. "Do you want to know me," I asked, "or do you want to know the billionaire from the newspaper?" He didn't hesitate. "I want to know my daughter." And for the first time in years, I believed him. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. People lined up at our table, CEOs, investors, board members, speaking to me as an equal. Some pitched ideas. Others simply congratulated me. The same room that once dismissed me now treated me like someone whose time was scarce and valuable. But for the first time that night, I wasn't interested in networking. I was watching my family. Watching them recalibrate. Watching them see. As we stepped outside the plaza, the cool Manhattan air felt grounding. The city lights reflected off polished cars and marble columns. My father walked beside me quietly. "The article mentioned you sit on 3 corporate boards," he said. "That you mentor founders. That you created a foundation funding art programs in 50 cities. Yes. All while we thought you were barely surviving. Yes." He stopped walking. "I will never forgive myself for missing this," he said. "For missing you." "You don't have to carry that forever," I replied gently. "We still have time." My mother joined us, her expression softer than I'd seen in years. Will you have dinner with us? She asked. Just us. No guests. No comparisons. Tell us about your company. About your life. I'd like that, I said. Victoria stepped closer. And maybe, you could show us your office sometime. I can arrange that. Daniel gave me a small, genuine smile. Not competitive. Not superior. Just proud. I owe you more apologies, he said. Start with dinner, I replied lightly. My car pulled up, a quiet black Tesla, not the Porsche in my garage. No dramatic statement. Just efficiency. Before I got in, my father hugged me. Longer than he had in years. I'm proud of you, he whispered again. Not because you're wealthy. Because you were brave. That mattered more than the headlines. As the car drove away, I looked back through the window. My parents stood together on the sidewalk, deep in conversation. My siblings nearby, still processing. My phone buzzed non-stop, media requests, messages from clients, texts from my PR team in all caps. I silenced it. Tonight wasn't about publicity. It was about something much quieter. 7 years ago, I chose myself. The revenue, the valuation, the recognition, those were outcomes. The real victory happened the day I walked away from law school and trusted my own vision. My phone lit up one last time. A text from Mom, thank you for never giving up. We are ready to listen. I smiled. This time, I believed they were.